A wealthy but emotionally numb millionaire buys an old warehouse to tear it down for a luxury project. But inside, he discovers two little girls, sewing clothes in exhaustion, their fingers bleeding. As he freezes in shock, one of them whispers something that connects directly to his hidden past and flips his world upside down. Before starting the story, make sure to subscribe the channel so that you don't miss any update in future. He kicked open the rusty warehouse door and froze. Two little girls sat on the dusty floor, sewing. Their fingers were bleeding. No electricity, no light, just a single cracked window, and two tiny hands stitching torn clothes with trembling fingers. They didn't even look up, like this was normal. The taller girl, no older than 8, kept her eyes down, threading a dull needle. The younger one, maybe 5, had tears on her cheeks, but kept working. The millionaire, Daniel Graves, a man known for breaking deals and buying buildings like candy, couldn't move. Not because he was scared, but because the little girl just whispered something that stabbed his soul. "Mama said you'd come one day." He blinked. Was this a scam? A setup? No, this was something else entirely. Daniel had bought the warehouse just yesterday, a spontaneous buy, like always. Old textile site. Nothing useful, the broker had said. But something about the name on the papers had caught his eye. Everthread Industries. It was familiar. Too familiar. But he'd ignored the gut feeling. Money doesn't wait for nostalgia. And now here he was, standing in silence, while two little girls sat on torn blankets, sewing ripped jackets. Like it was 1890. The air was thick with dust. But underneath it, something else. Desperation. Daniel slowly stepped forward. The floor creaked. The younger girl flinched. The older one didn't. Instead, she said calmly, "Please don't take our home." Her voice was steady. Dead calm, the kind of calm that only comes after 100 storms. Daniel knelt down. "What's your name?" She looked up at him, eyes too tired for her age. "Elsie." "And her?" "June. My sister." Daniel's heart dropped a level deeper. June. His mother's name. No, that was just a coincidence, right? He tried to stay composed. Where's your mother?" Elsie paused. Her fingers didn't. She kept sewing. She left. Said if anything ever happened, wait here. Happened? Daniel's voice cracked. Elsie finally stopped. Her eyes locked on his. She got sick. Real bad. But said if she didn't make it, you'd come. Daniel froze again. This wasn't happening. He looked around tattered walls, an old sewing machine, a single broken photo frame with a blurry picture. He picked it up. It was worn, water damaged, but he saw it. Her face. Rachel. Rachel, from college. The girl he'd loved. The girl who left without a word. And in the picture was him. Younger. Holding her hand. And two baby girls in her arms. He dropped the frame. His mouth went dry. "Where did your mom go? Where was she staying?" "Elsie, here. She lived here. Worked here. Until she couldn't anymore." Daniel whispered, more to himself than to her. "Why didn't she tell me?" Elsie answered without flinching. "She tried. But you were busy, being important." Silence. That one sentence hit harder than any lawsuit or market crash ever had. June suddenly coughed, a deep, dry cough that made Daniel flinch. She clutched a cloth to her chest, but it was soaked red. Blood. Daniel rushed forward. "She needs a hospital. Why hasn't anyone helped you?" Elsie stood protectively in front of her sister. "Because nobody comes here. Nobody sees us. We're invisible." He looked around, all the luxury, all the money, all the projects he'd built. None of them mattered here. Because this was real. He gently reached out. "Let me help." But Elsie stepped back. "Are you going to take us away like the last man?" "What last man?" He said he was from a shelter. Took kids. But Mama said, never trust the ones who smile too much. Daniel's hands trembled. These girls, they weren't just orphans. They were survivors. Of a system. A silence. A past that somehow included him. Elsie took a deep breath and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. She unfolded it slowly, placed it in Daniel's hands. A letter. Old. Torn. But sealed with a name. To Daniel Graves, in case I don't make it. He stared at it, frozen. His name. Her handwriting. And suddenly, the floor beneath his world cracked. Daniel stared at the letter like it was a ticking bomb. The edges were curled, yellowed by time. The ink had bled from water damage, but the name was still clear. His name. His hands trembled as he opened it, the girls watching silently. He could feel Elsie's eyes on him, studying every breath he took. The first line read, "If you're reading this, I didn't make it." His stomach twisted. "I tried to tell you. I tried so many times. But you changed, Daniel. After your father died, you buried everything, including me. Including them." His throat tightened. He remembered now. The calls he never returned. The letter he once tossed unopened into the fireplace. Rachel had tried. And he had been too busy proving to the world that he wasn't his father. He looked up at the girls. June had fallen asleep, curled beside a pile of rags. Elsie still stood, arms crossed, lips tight. She didn't trust him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You wanted freedom. I gave it to you. But I never told you about them because I knew you weren't ready. I hoped one day you'd become the man who deserved to know. Who'd care? His jaw clenched. If you're here, it means I've run out of time. But they haven't. Please don't let the world forget them. Don't become like the others. I know you were broken, Daniel. But so was I. And these girls? They're stronger than both of us ever were. Daniel folded the letter slowly, like it might disintegrate if he blinked too hard. He sat on the floor, right there among dust and broken dreams. "Elsie," he said gently, "I'm sorry." She didn't respond. So he asked, carefully, "How long have you two been living here alone?" She shrugged, eyes scanning him. "I don't count days anymore. We just wait for morning. And hope it comes." That sentence wrecked him. Elsie wasn't angry. She wasn't even scared. She was tired. The kind of tired that lives in your bones. Daniel reached into his coat and pulled out his phone. "I'm calling a doctor. June needs help now." But Elsie took a step forward, hand raised. "She's scared of hospitals. They always try to separate us. If she wakes up and I'm not there, she'll scream." Daniel paused. The last thing he wanted to do was make anything worse. "Then I'll bring the doctor here," he said. "Right here. No one's taking her away. I promise." Elsie didn't answer, but she didn't stop him either. Progress. As he walked to the far corner to make the call, Daniel noticed the small things. A pair of broken shoes tucked under a beam. A crayon drawing nailed to the wall with a rusty nail. 2 stick girls and a woman beside a lake. A can of beans with scratch marks on the lid opened with scissors. He turned away, heart heavy, and called his private physician. "Come to Everthread Warehouse. Now. Emergency. Bring what you need for a child." Then he added, quieter, "Bring compassion too." When he turned back, Elsie was wiping June's forehead with a damp cloth. There was tenderness in her fingers, but there was no childhood in her eyes. "You shouldn't have to be her mother," Daniel said softly. Elsie didn't look up. Somebody had to be. An hour passed. The doctor arrived. Stunned but professional. He treated June with the care of a father, not just a physician. She had an infection severe, but treatable. She needs a clean bed, warm food, antibiotics. She'll recover. But only if she's taken out of here today, the doctor said. Daniel looked at Elsie. This was the moment. "Come with me," he said. "Both of you. I'll get you anything. A house. A school. Whatever you want." Elsie looked at June. Then back at Daniel. "Why?" "Because I think I was supposed to. And I failed. But I don't want to fail again." She tilted her head, studying his face. "You're the man from the picture. Mama used to talk about you when she thought we were asleep." Daniel felt tears threaten to rise. "She said you were good once. But then you got lost." "She was right," he whispered. Elsie stood up. "Then find your way back." They left the warehouse that night. Daniel didn't call his driver. He carried June himself. Held Elsie's hand like it was glass. When they reached the car, he opened the door. But Elsie paused. "You're not going to send us away later, are you? Like a charity?" "No," he said, voice firm. Then what are we to you? He took a breath. I don't know yet, but you're not just anyone. That I'm sure of. Elsie climbed in. June stirred in his arms, whispering through sleep. Are we safe now? He looked out at the warehouse one last time. Yes, you are. But as they drove off into the night, Daniel didn't feel peace. He felt a storm, because Rachel's letter had more pages. And on the last one, she'd written something that made his hands go numb. Words he hadn't read aloud. Not yet. The mansion was quiet. Too quiet. Daniel hadn't stepped foot inside his guest wing in years. The place felt like a museum, polished floors, expensive art, lifeless air. But tonight, it held two souls that had shattered something in him. June was resting upstairs, wrapped in soft blankets, medicine working slowly through her fragile body. Elsie was wide awake, sitting on the edge of a velvet chair like she didn't belong. Like one wrong move would send her back into the cold warehouse where the rats had names and the wind never stopped whispering. Daniel stood by the fire, Rachel's letter in his hand, the final page still folded. He hadn't dared open it yet. Elsie's eyes followed him. Quiet. Observing. She hadn't spoken much since they arrived. But now, as the clock ticked past midnight, she broke the silence. Did you love our mom? Daniel looked up, startled. Not by the question, but by how direct it was. He nodded slowly. I did. Then why'd you leave? The fire cracked. Somewhere upstairs, a pipe groaned. Daniel sat across from her, hands clasped tight. It wasn't that simple. Everything is simple, she said flatly. Grown-ups just make it complicated so they don't feel guilty. He couldn't argue. She was right. Daniel stared at the envelope, finally unfolding the last page. His eyes scanned the words. And then, he stopped breathing. The lines blurred. His face went pale. Elsie tilted her head. What is it? He didn't answer at first. Then, in a voice hollow and distant, he read. There's something you never knew. Something I couldn't say. June isn't just your daughter. She's your sister's child. The words echoed through his mind. Sister. Rachel had never told him she knew Claire. Claire, his younger sister, who vanished after their father died. The one Daniel had searched for until he gave up. Rachel's words continued. Claire came to me broken, addicted, pregnant. She begged me to keep her baby safe. I couldn't say no. Not to her. Not to June. Daniel dropped the page. His entire chest felt like it had caved in. June wasn't his daughter. She was his niece. And Rachel, she raised her like her own. Elsie watched his hands tremble. You didn't know? He shook his head slowly. I failed them both. He stood, pacing now. Claire was alone, and I wasn't there. Rachel carried the weight of it all, and I never even knew. I was chasing buildings, contracts, money. But you didn't chase people, Elsie whispered. Her voice wasn't accusing. It was just true. Daniel walked to the window. Rain tapped the glass like a ticking clock. He saw his reflection, sharp suit, gray at the temples, but the eyes. They were hollow. What happened to Claire? He asked, not turning. Elsie was quiet for a moment. Then she stood, walked over to the side table, and pulled out a folded, crinkled photograph from her coat. She handed it to him. It was Claire, gaunt, tired, but smiling, with June in her arms. She came back when June was 4. She was clean. She brought toys. She braided my hair. She stayed for a week. Elsie swallowed. Then she left again. Mama said not to ask where she went. But I knew. Daniel clutched the photo. She died, didn't she? Elsie nodded. Overdose. In a train station. Mama found out 2 days later. That's when she got sick. She changed after that. Silence. And then, sobs. Real, broken sobs. From Daniel. He collapsed into the chair, hands over his face. For years, he'd been living in a fortress made of glass and gold. And now, piece by piece, it was all crashing down. Elsie knelt beside him. Small hands. Steady voice. You don't have to cry. He looked at her through blurred eyes. Why not? Because you can still do something. Her words didn't judge. They invited. What do you mean? He asked. She stood, looking him in the eye. Everyone else looked at us and walked away. But you didn't. That means something. You can still be someone to us, if you want. The firelight flickered across her face. Daniel felt something he hadn't in years. Hope. Not the kind that money buys. The kind that burns quietly and grows stronger with every honest breath. He stood, took her hand, and said only 3 words. I want to. The next morning, Daniel sat at his desk. Not to draft a contract. Not to approve a deal. But to make a decision. He called his lawyers. His architect. His media team. We're canceling the redevelopment of the warehouse. We're rebuilding it. But not for profit. For people. For kids like them. The lawyer tried to speak. Daniel cut him off. Not a single cent will be made from it. I want a shelter. A clinic. A school. And I want it named after Rachel. His voice didn't shake. It commanded. Because for the first time in years, Daniel Graves wasn't chasing power. He was chasing redemption. As the sun broke through the clouds, Elsie stood at the balcony, staring down at the world she'd never seen from so high. June joined her, holding her hand. And behind them, Daniel watched. Not as a millionaire, not as a broken man, but as someone finally waking up. A week passed. The mansion didn't feel like a fortress anymore. It felt alive. Laughter had returned, light, clumsy, full of healing. June had color in her cheeks again. Her cough, once frightening, had softened into nothing more than memory. Elsie no longer sat like a stranger. She claimed corners now, drew pictures, rearranged vases, hummed lullabies Daniel never knew he remembered. But something still weighed on his chest. Something he couldn't shake. And it wasn't just guilt. It was unfinished business. Daniel stood by his study window one morning, holding a small red notebook Rachel had left behind. It had been buried deep in her old trunk, wrapped in a scarf that smelled faintly of her perfume. Inside were pages of her handwriting, sketches, scribbled plans, and at the very back, a simple sentence. The girls deserve a world with light. Daniel closed the notebook gently. He looked out the window, his eyes falling to the garden, where June was laughing, chasing butterflies. Elsie watched nearby, still guarded, still strong. He knew what he had to do. That night, he took them both back to the warehouse. It had changed, cleaned out, lit up, walls repainted, broken glass gone. But the bones of the place remained. The echoes of tears, silence, and survival still clung to the bricks. June looked around, confused. Why are we back? Daniel knelt beside her. Because this place matters. Because your mother made it sacred. Elsie stood quietly behind them, staring at the corner where the broken sewing machine once sat. It was gone now. In its place was a framed photo. Rachel, smiling, holding them both. And beside it, a plaque. Rachel's light, a place where forgotten voices are heard. Elsie stepped closer, her hand brushing over the words. Daniel spoke softly behind her. This building will never be sold again. It's a shelter now. A school. A sanctuary. She turned to him. Why are you doing all this? Because I should have done it long ago. Because you deserved more. And because I owe her. Elsie's eyes didn't soften. Not yet. But her voice did. She loved you. Even when you disappeared. Daniel nodded. I know. And I think that's what broke her. Not poverty. Not sickness. But the loneliness. He walked over to the wall and unwrapped something covered in cloth. A mirror. Old. Slightly cracked. She told me once, he said, that love is like light. You don't see it unless you step into it. He looked at his reflection, at the man he had become. I lived in shadows for too long. The ceremony happened a week later. Small, private, but powerful. Local kids came. So did volunteers. Daniel stood before a crowd not as a CEO, but as a man rebuilding himself. He told the truth. About Rachel. About Claire. About the 2 girls who turned an empire into a heart. The media didn't know what to make of it. A billionaire breaks down in front of orphans. From real estate to redemption, who is Daniel Graves really? But Daniel didn't care. Because the only audience that mattered was seated in the front row, holding hands. That night, after everyone left, Daniel sat on the warehouse steps with Elsie beside him. They watched the sun fade behind the city skyline. "It's beautiful," she whispered. He nodded. "So are you." She looked at him sideways. "You don't have to pretend, you know, that you've figured everything out. I know you're still learning." He smiled. "I'm okay with that, as long as I don't stop." She took a deep breath. "We used to think no one would ever find us. And now we think maybe Mama was right." Daniel turned to her. "About what?" "That light always finds a way in." Weeks turned into months. The shelter grew. Volunteers came from all over. More children arrived, some scared, some angry, some completely silent. But all of them found something here. Hope, safety, family. Daniel became a fixture, not just a name on a plaque. He told bedtime stories. He learned to braid hair. He even cried openly once, and no one laughed. He built a room called Rachel's Library. Every child had a key. No locks, no secrets, only stories of survival and strength. Elsie eventually asked to enroll in a real school. June started drawing birds. She said they reminded her of how her mother's voice sounded when she was happy. And Daniel? He smiled more now, but he never forgot the shadows. Because remembering is what made the light real. One evening, as he tucked June into bed, she asked softly, "Are you my uncle?" Daniel paused. He nodded slowly. "Yes, I am." She giggled. "That makes you even older than I thought." He laughed, kissing her forehead. "And that makes you smarter than I'll ever be." Later that night, he returned to his study, picked up Rachel's red notebook one last time. There was one empty page left. He picked up a pen, and he wrote, "I found them. I was late, but I found them. And now, they found me too." He closed the book, placed it by the window, and whispered to the night air, "Thank you, Rachel, for everything." Outside, the stars were bright. And for the first time in years, he felt seen. Not as a millionaire, not as a failure, but as someone who finally stepped into the light. Sometimes, the people we forget are the ones who needed us the most. And sometimes, it's too late to say sorry, but never too late to start making things right. True wealth isn't measured in money, buildings, or titles. It's measured in the lives we heal, the hands we hold, and the love we choose to return no matter how long it's been lost. Because even in the darkest places, a single act of compassion can bring back the light. And sometimes that light saves not just others, but ourselves.